Good evening, everyone. This is a special treat tonight in the sense that we get to welcome a new author, Taylor Moore, with his first book, this marvelous Downrange, for which we have autographed copies. It's our first mystery book of the month for August. So thank you, Taylor, for signing our books. And with any luck, you're actually shipping them to us this week. So we'll have them here in the store, right?
They're all signed and they're ready to go. I'll get them in UPS tomorrow, so they'll be to you soon. Yeah, so thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's a real honor.
And joining us is Don Bentley, whom we've done several events with, who's wonderful. And his most recent book, well, he has two most recent books, actually, The Outside Man, and then Tom Clancy, Target Acquired. We still have, do we have autographed copies of both of those still, Patrick?
I think just the Clancy, The Outside Man.
I do too. I think we sold out of The Outside Man.
We did, yeah.
Right. Anyway, wonderful books. And as I was saying to Don and Taylor before we went live, it appears to me that the new trend is for authors who write books, they have to sign up in the military, join the military, learn the discipline, get the real life, whatever it is that they get experience, and then they bring it to their fiction. So Downrange is a really interesting book. It starts out, you think it's going to be a military thriller. Then the next thing you know, you're heading to Texas and it's kind of a double coming of age story. And then, oh, I won't go any further than that. I'm going to let Don talk to it. Patrick, who wrote a wonderful piece about this book for Publishers Weekly, is actually going to be the host. I'm going to bow out. And this will be a guide event. So I hope you all have a wonderful time. Thank you so much for joining us. And Patrick, take over.
Okay. Hey, well, congratulations, Taylor, on the publication of the book. It's very exciting. I'm really happy for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I'm going to let Don do the heavy lifting here, but I'll jump in. I mean, I'm sure Don would agree. There's so much to talk about with this book. You know, there's the CIA and the military stuff, which I'm not particularly qualified to discuss, but as a student of this part of Texas, you know, we talked a little bit, the Llano Estacado, High Plains part of Texas is, I just find it so fascinating. And I've read a lot about the Comanches who really, ruled that part of Texas and, well, the entire state of Texas for a period of time. And there's just such an interesting, collusion between the cartels these days and these small oil companies in the region. There's just a lot to discuss in the book. So I'll turn it over to Don for now, but I'll pop up now and then with some questions too.
All right, absolutely.
Thanks for the awesome lead in, Patrick, and for everybody else too. I don't know if you've got it linked, Taylor, or we can find it, but y'all should check out the Publishers Weekly piece that Patrick did on Taylor. It's phenomenal. The interview is incredible. And speaking of phenomenal, I've been waiting, even though I don't have the pretty copy, I've got the PDF one, to talk about this book, because this has been my favorite book of the year. I've been talking about it nonstop, and I'm so psyched to be able to talk to you about it finally, Taylor, on the eve before it comes out. So just before we get started, what is it like the night before your debut novel comes out?
It's a lot of things. It's surreal because it's taken so long to get. I mean, Don, the process of getting published, and from finding an agent to the rewrites, and then the rewrites again, and the other rewrites, and all the things that you go through to finally get it ready. And then actually getting it out is just, I can't believe it's here. It's literally the hardest thing I've ever done. And, I've had a variety of careers and they all had their difficulties, but nothing has been as hard, but as rewarding as writing this novel and getting it out there. So it's really cool. There's been a lot of events like this, a lot of press. And so I kind of thought, I'd sort of ease into this thing, and it's not, it's a whirlwind, but when it's your baby, when it's something you love, like a book that you put your blood, sweat, and tears into, it's a good feeling. Yeah. It's a lot of work, but it's a good feeling to talk about it. And you want to talk about it because you love it and you're excited about it and you want other people to be excited about it.
So Barbara has a ton of folks that watch these that are both readers who love the books as well as writers or aspiring writers. So for those aspiring writers out there, a little bit of inside baseball. how long was it for you from when your agent sold the book till today? How long was that?
So when he sold it to today, that's a little over a year.
Mhm.
So I don't think that part wasn't as hard as actually writing the book, getting the
Yep.
agent, and then once I had my agent, a lot of people don't know this, but I got my agent with a completely different novel, a completely different series I was developing with a completely different protagonist. And
Yep.
I've told the story a few times, but it's good for writers to hear that
Yep.
my agent, John Talbot, he's a wonderful agent, a wonderful visionary. He's the one, after I'd rewritten that book several times, said, why don't we just scrap that thing and start fresh? And so as a writer, it's literally, it's the last thing you ever want to hear is like, why don't we
Right.
start from scratch? But that's what he did. That's what he suggested. And Don, you know the story, I've told you before, but it was a hard thing to do. It was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, to take all that work. And it wasn't for naught. I mean,
Yep.
you're building the craft, you're getting better all the time.
Yep.
Every time you write something, you're getting better, you're learning lessons, you're getting that feedback, presumably if you have, a good agent like I do, or a good critique group or mentors, they're helping you. So all it did
Yep.
was help me to make a better book when it was actually time to pitch this thing and sell it to a publisher.
Yep.
And that was the right book to sell for me. The other ones I
Yep.
think were good, but they weren't the right book, and this was the right book. And so so that was kind of the process. So again, once I got the publishing deal, there's several rewrites, but really it was that lead up, writing 2-3 2-3 years to really get finally get the agent, because the agent I have now, he turned me
Yep.
down the first time.
Yep.
And I resubmitted, even though I probably wasn't supposed to, but I did everything this guy said, and I wanted to get it right. I wanted to be a published author,
Right.
and that was all there was to it. And nobody was going to stop me. And so fortunately, I kept my head down. I kept going forward, and here we are.
And you're in good company there, because Mark Graney also wrote a completely different book that had the gray man as a side character, and his agent said, nope, start over again, write the book and have this be. And so from writing and getting John as your agent until today, what period of time was that for you?
So I think that started, so let's see, that was, I got John as my agent. What was that, 2018? Is that right?
Mhm. Yeah.
The last, it was I'm trying to think. I go by Thriller Fest. That's how I mark my time, because it was the Thriller Fest before I met you.
Yeah.
And so that you were 2019 is when you were a debut
Yeah.
writer, isn't that correct? So that would have been 2018. And then 2019 is kind of when we, he started pitching
Mhm.
that book, and that kind of started developing that interest with William Morrow. And then 2020, so here we are, 2021, till
Yeah.
it's finally, so it's 4 years. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a long
Yeah.
process, man. It's a long process. So writing a novel, getting published, is an exercise in patience and diligence and everything that will test every part of you. That is part of this process. And it's a hard one, but it's worth it.
No, and I can't wait for tomorrow for the world to get this. Like I said, I've been beating this drum for a long time. I'm so excited about this book. But I think what makes, Nick Petrie, whenever I have something wise, I attribute it to Nick Petrie, and
Okay.
whether he says it or not. So we're going to pretend he says this. But one of the things he talks about is what separates a good book from a great book is how much of themselves the author is willing to put into that book, and how much of it you're willing to be vulnerable and put that in the pages of it. And so you're a Texas boy, born and bred, live in Texas again now. And you also have a pretty interesting background that we just kind of glossed over there for a minute. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you did? Because I have a feeling that actually played maybe as much as your Texas root into this book.
Yeah. So I have obviously I was born and raised in Texas, grew up on a farm and ranch. And so that part of me was very near and dear. That's how I grew up. And that was sort of the lifestyle and everything that I knew. So that part of the book, naturally comes into play. But my background, I was a CIA intelligence officer. and that's a big part of the story. Even though Garrett Cole, my protagonist, is DEA. Again, he was a side character in my CIA novel, but he stuck out, and he sort of stole the show. And but the CIA is still a big part of this book, even though the book and the series will be set in Texas. You'll just have to see how it plays out. But I keep the CIA involved in this thing. But really, what I wanted to do is I had this, and being in the CIA and working with the FBI, Don, we work well together, or we work together. Sometimes we work well, sometimes we don't. But basically there's two different mission sets, and the FBI is out to make arrests for the most part, and the CIA is out to steal secrets, and the FBI, they have their intelligence part of that too. But I mean, it's just it's a different mindset in the way things work. And so I always had this idea of as a law enforcement guy that and I used to work with FBI, and they would kind of look at us sometimes and shake their heads. I knew what they were thinking, and so I thought, well, I'm going to take this guy, I'm going to put him in the CIA world, and I'm going to have the CIA riding over him, and what's that going to be like for him. And so the book is very personal to me because I saw that play from the other side. I wasn't the guy, but I knew how they saw us, and I knew what was going on, and I knew why. And so I wanted to take my character, and it's just fun to isolate your protagonist and throw every obstacle in the world against them. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to take this sort of a law enforcement officer that sees things, very cut and dry, very black and white, and put him in that gray world of the CIA. And that's what he gets into. And so it's fun. I think it's a fun dynamic to see him play out, and he's a country boy. And so he's very like, I see things a certain way, and right and wrong, and good and evil. And the CIA doesn't always, operate exactly like that. It can be very gray. So that was a fun world to put poor Garrett in and throw him into that world and see how he comes out of it. But he does very well. He handles himself well. And so that's sort of the dynamic there. And that's how my background played into the story.
Yeah, so from my side of the fence, we used to refer to our CIA brethren as professional liars. Like that was kind of what we talked to them. And so I'm assuming, because you have this fantastic character, Garrett Cole, who is, as you said, a lawman, that at some point during your CIA career, like what happens with most folks in the CIA career field, you develop a hero complex for FBI agents and sort of worship them. Is that kind of what happened with you as well? And why is that what happened?
Yeah, that doesn't ring a bell at all.
All right.
It's usually, how can we do this job without those guys getting in the way?
So what I love about this book, and one of the many things I love about it, and Barbara kind of hit on it when she first introduced it, is when you start reading the book, it's very, very good, but you think it's going to be a completely different book, the first chapter or two, and then everything changes. And so can you talk a little bit about that and what it was as intentional? Because you could have, you write such a compelling book once it moves to Texas too. You could have written a book just about Texas that had a lot of the dynamics and stuff that's in that, but you started from a completely different place. And that's what I love so much about this book, is you took the same but made it different. Can you kind of talk a little bit about how you got there and why that's important to this book?
I don't know. You know how it is when you write. When you're writing, you're just writing, and so we talked about the Comanches earlier. I've had people ask me, throughout this process, like, well, why did you write this? Why do you write? How do you come up with a story? And I always say, I just think of things that are really cool that I'm interested in. I just kind of throw them together and hope it works, And so I have a passion for, West, the history of the West and the Wild West and Texas and the Comanche and the Cowboys. I love all that stuff. I'm a big Larry McMurtry fan, but at the same time, I'm a big Tom Clancy fan. So I loved all that intrigue. And obviously, I just put my worlds together, having grown up on a farm ranch in Texas, and then having worked at the CIA and had a passion for international relations and all that kind of stuff. I just sort of threw those worlds together, and I said, let's just see what happens. And the idea of having this operator, on a horseback with a cowboy hat and keffiyeh scarf, and an AR-15 just was cool as it gets to me. Let's put these things together and see what happens.
And you did such a good job of that. Like you mentioned, like it could have been Lonesome Dove at parts of it. And then all of a sudden the CIA is in there and the dude has an AR and you're like, what is happening here? And so can you, I've lived in Texas off and on for the last 20 years and here in Dallas and Austin for the last 12 or so. And I thought I knew Texas. But reading your book, you hear about, and Lonesome Dove is an awesome example where they do that, where Texas itself is a character. It's not just a setting, it's actually a character in the novel. And I think you did that so well here. And so can you talk a little bit more about setting it in the high country and what your relationship was to that and why? Because it's so well done.
Yeah, well, and that's a great question. And the answer is because the High Plains and the Llano Estacado was new for me. I mean, this was a place, I grew up in Texas, but I grew up in Central Texas. And it's just, I know, a lot of people are probably listening, tonight that they just lump Texas all together, but it's not the same place. And, Don, having lived here and, coming from somewhere else, you probably have a more of an eye for it too, because, you've lived in, you live in Austin, but you've lived in Dallas, and those cities have nothing in common, nothing, and I lived in San Antonio. I've lived in Austin. I mean, and they're not that far apart, but San Antonio and Austin are nothing alike. Well, it's exactly the same way when you get up to the Texas High Plains. When I might have grown up on a farm and ranch in Texas, but it's not like this. This is the Wild West out here. And when I moved up here, I was working in oil and gas. I'd left the Intel business and joined the oil business. And so I was going out, I was a landman. So I was the guy that would go out on these big ranches and make these deals with landowners and, do mineral rights and all that kind of stuff. And it was just, for me, I was kind of a kid in a candy store because I love, we talk about Lonesome Dove. I love that whole idea of the Llano Estacado and just being out in the middle of nowhere. And I could just picture Gus and Carl and Blue Duck and all these people riding up on the Caprock. And it for a writer, my imagination just went into overdrive. And it was just so beautiful. The characters I came across in the High Plains, you just can't beat them. I mean, they're just good, salt of the earth, like wonderful people. So they kind of came alive in that story. And so I just started, so there's a lot of people that I met along the way that really just, again, sort of captivated my attention and captivated that process in my mind that said, there's a story building here. And then on top of that, there's the whole counter narcotics, drugs is a problem everywhere, and the High Plains isn't. I mean, that's here too. And I started hearing stories about things that were going on, and maybe businesses that were corrupt and all that. So again, in my writer brain, I just started putting it all together, and so I think it made for a fun story.
It makes for an incredible story.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, maybe for both of you guys. I mean, it's interesting to talk about at the beginning of the book. Don was alluding to, starts off in Afghanistan, and I was, fascinated to learn about all the different agencies that are there. I mean, we know the military's there, of course, and but all these intelligence groups and security groups, and can you sort of talk about what the DEA's role in this particular thing? I mean, we know Afghanistan is a major, world center for opium and heroin. Can you talk a little bit about what Garrett was doing there?
Yeah, so basically Garrett was on a task force over there, and they were there's a variety of sort of missions that were going on in the story, but tackling the opium trade up there, that's what he was doing, and the poppy fields and all that kind of stuff. So he was on a task force up there that was meant to be sort of trying to figure out this dilemma, because it's not just about drugs and people doing drugs and it's illegal. It's about lots and lots and lots of money being made from the production of this stuff, and it going into the wrong hands, going into terrorist hands, and going into surface to air missiles and things like that terrorists could get in their hands and not only attack people, attack our troops and our forces over in Afghanistan, but once this stuff leaves those borders, then what happens? So again, a lot of times people say, oh, the DEA, who care, let people do drugs. Well, it's just not about letting people do drugs. It's if they're purchasing something that could knock down a civilian airliner, that's a big deal. And so that's sort of the focus of why Garrett was over there. The mission was that critical.
Yeah, and it was surreal when I read about that, because one of the missions I actually did in Afghanistan. So Patrick, you talk about the different agencies there. There was a hit the DEA was doing on a Taliban drug lab in the mountains of Afghanistan. So the DEA is leading the operation. Me and another Apache are flying Overwatch for it. There's an Australian SAS component that's going in to blow up the drug press, an Afghan platoon that's going to secure it, and then a couple of Taylor's friends that are running around doing their thing too. And so it's literally this mishmash in the middle of Afghanistan doing a drug raid on the mountain somewhere. Like, it really happens that way.
And does coordination become an issue? I'm sure. Or does everybody know what everybody else is doing?
I think, well, one of the funniest things for me, and I'll let Taylor tell it from his side, which is probably more interesting, is that we're showing up for the final mission rehearsal, right? So I'm kitted up. The aviators are standing there. There's a terrain model that we're going through what we're going to do and where we're going to be. And the Afghan guy, there were actually Afghan hips that were flying, the Afghan guys. And we're all standing there kitting up, looking for the guy who's going to blow up the lab. And it's some Aussie that comes up in his brown t-shirt with his gear over his shoulder. And he's like, I got the charge. I'm ready to go. And I'm like, oh, good Lord.
Crikey.
So it is a little bit crazy. But maybe Taylor's got a different insight on that.
No, you hit the nail on the head. And that's why, to me, those are the things that were sort of fun to put in a book. And I, again, you can put a lot of things, but I wanted to show that dynamic of how these groups have to work together. And again, and I don't want to give anything away because I want people to read it, but you'll see how that plays out, and you'll see the DA when he has to go deal with the base chief who's CIA. Like so we've joked about this before. Everybody always claims that the CIA steals their assets or steals resources or whatever, and I don't know if that's true or not, but I at least played it out in fiction just because people think that, and I want to appease people like Don who believe that to be true.
It is true, Patrick. It's absolutely true. So let's hit one more CIA thing since you brought it up. What is the biggest myth that you would like to dispel about the CIA?
There's so many. I think that I think there's a myth that the CIA is running out with guns and running around kind of like more like the FBI and has this sort of arrest authority, and that they're doing that kind of thing. You know what I mean? I think there's a confusion as to what the CIA does. And so, I even laugh. I've got I have several buddies that are SEALs, and I was having a conversation with one a few weeks back, and he said something about something about, remember when we were, sitting around eating MREs or whatever. I was like, man, I never ate any MREs. I was like in a suit and sitting in hotel rooms drinking coffee and, eating croissants, man. Like, I know what you think I did, but that wasn't it. I had a whole other kind of job, and so I think everybody, there's sort of perception, everybody maybe is Jason Bourne or a paramilitary SAD guy or something, but a lot of, not necessarily. A lot of it's just kind of, it's secretive stuff, but it's just done behind closed doors.
Well, there is a sense that Garrett does have he compartmentalizes his life in a lot of ways. I mean, his family isn't exactly hip to what's going on intentionally, and I guess since we do have to watch spoilers, of course, but since it's very early on in the book, is it possible to talk about the sort of the opening incident and what happens and what takes him back home to Texas?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing I'm pretty comfortable with, because that kind of happens early in the book. But yeah, basically what happens is Garrett, he's out there, he's out meeting with supposed to meet with the source, and he happens upon, he finds himself in a place he's not supposed to be, and sees something he wasn't supposed to see. But he comes across a group of sort of marauders that are taking over this village and basically raise this village and massacre a lot of people that are in it. And since he's not supposed to be there, he doesn't really know what to do. He's just a solo guy out there because he's trying to keep a low profile. But something happens that sparks something in him, and what it is there's a 10-year-old boy that manages to escape, and the bad guys are coming after him. And again, not to give too much away, but we kind of know the boy ends up back with him, and so he ends up grabbing the kid and just getting hightailing out of there as quick as he can. And takes the poor boy back to the base where he's where it's a CIA base where he's working, and basically it's just a whole mess because he has this boy. Obviously, they got to do something with the kid, and they don't really know what to do because he was in a restricted zone and saw these things he wasn't supposed to see, engaged the enemy, and wasn't supposed to do that. So broke all these rules of engagement. So he ends up in a whole world of hurt, a whole world of trouble. And sort of there's one way to get out of this is to sort of take that kid, get him out of sight, do sort of a protective custody assignment until they can sort of smooth things over and figure out what happened. And so that's how he ends up back in Texas. And so the idea is that, if he goes back to Texas, he can sort of keep the kid safe. He'll go back to his ranch. He knows it like the back of his hand. He feels safe there. That's a place where he'd be okay. Well, little does he know he's out of the frying pan and into the oven, because it goes from bad to worse. And I won't say any more from there. I'll just say that the tempo picks up, and like you said, there's some twists and turns. You think the story's going to go one way, it goes another, and that's by design. I want to make it fun. I want it to make it edge of your seat and keep readers guessing as to what's going to happen. And so partially there's a little bit of misdirection here and there, and I'll leave it at that.
I don't know about you, Don, but I loved the crusty old patriarch, Butch. What a great character.
Yeah, the whole family. Barbara, I can't remember how she termed it, much more eloquent than I did, but something like a coming home, coming of age. Yeah. So you shift the book again, and you do this so well. Like when I travel in my book, it's like Matt's in one city and the chapter next there he is. And you instead take Afghanistan and then you juxtapose it to Texas, and you do this beautiful job as Garrett's driving through Texas of both unpacking his different compartments, as Patrick termed it. And then as Texas changes, he's changing to this coming, now he's coming home, and he leaves the mountains of Afghanistan, and he has his father, his brother, the one that got away, and the whole book shifts again. It's just so beautifully done. But did you have it in your mind of having, because in some ways when I read that, you have Afghanistan, that's this incredibly harsh but beautiful country, and then you're seeing Texas in almost that same light again, but it's now the country that he grew up in. Was that something you did intentionally, or something that just came out of the book, or how did that work?
It was kind of by accident. I mean, it was kind of just so happened to be that way, but it didn't go unnoticed when I was writing, because, here's this kid that's sort of like, it's taken from the Hindu Kush, and then sort of ends up in this sort of place that's not that unlike where he grew up, and a little bit more desolate and a little more out there and a little more isolated. But no, so that was kind of, I didn't intend it that way, but it is that way. And, you mentioned that a lot of people, so there's a couple of things you said just to cue in on, you mentioned Butch, the dad. He's been a reader favorite so far. Everybody really loves him. And he really is based on someone that I've met along the way up here. Not 100%, but somebody that I encountered when I was working in oil and gas. And it was just kind of a funny experience. And so I wanted a guy like that, and I thought he was great. And but you mentioned that drive up. A lot of people really love that scene where he's driving back through Texas, and it's sort of a slow entrance back in from, like you said, from Afghanistan to back to his home country, and it's sort of a tour of Texas of what he's experiencing, how he's getting back into it. And I give a little bit of Texas history along with that. And so that was kind of the point. And a lot of people have really loved the way I describe Texas. And I've had several people they say Texas is another character in the novel. And that kind of was, I don't know if that was necessarily intentional, but there's guys that I really admire, like CJ Box and Craig Johnson, that do such a great job. I call it world building, and I know the world exists, but it doesn't exist for me, or doesn't exist for a lot of readers. And so the same could be said for the Texas High Plains or the Llano Estacado. I wanted to build that world for readers and people to go, man, does this place really exist? Are these characters, true to life? And man, they are. I'm here to tell you they are, and so that was really the point of doing all that.
And so then once you get, like I said, you go from a very external conflict that is literally he's dodging bullets or something in the opening, to now he's back in his hometown, which should be if you look at it objectively, the tension should dramatically decrease because he's no longer dodging Taliban's in the mountains of Afghanistan. But now you've got this incredible internal conflict between his father and brother and the girl that got away, and then this little boy that he's doing. Like, how did all that come about?
Man, I don't know. That's a good question. You know, I don't know. I really don't know. It's one of those people when they say like, how do you write a book? I'm like, I don't know. I just sit down and start writing, and it's the worst answer on the planet. But I guess, yeah, I knew he needed to come home. I knew he had the problem with his family. I don't know. I don't know how that really came about. And I know that's a horrible answer. I just sit there and I think about what would happen next. So, you know, he gets there, his dad tells him there's a problem. Well, how does he find out that problem? We better go meet with his brother. He meets with his brother. Who best to, you know, help with that? Well, his old best friend, who's a sheriff's deputy. And then one thing leads to another, and one thing leads to another. And that guy says, hey, there's a bar you should go visit. You know what I mean? So, so that's how those characters enter, you know, Ike Hodges and Lacey and all these people that just sort of pop in and become major characters throughout the books, and they'll be throughout the series.
You kind of you hit on it a little bit before, so I want to also tread carefully with spoilers, but you alluded to the fact that the CIA's influence is not necessarily done with this series, right? And so you could have at the end of this book still you could have said that that's done. Now I'm going to focus. He's in Texas. He's going to do that. Why keep that in? Like, why keep? And I thought it was masterfully done, but it was this book was full of surprises, awesome surprises that took you in directions that you didn't expect. And that was one for me at the very end. Why did you leave that in? Why still keep that thread dangling out there?
Because it goes back to my passions again, and it goes back to what I love and what I know and what I enjoy. And I like that CIA aspect. I still like the international aspect, and I think it can play into a domestic thriller to have an internet, even if it's set on, you know, has a domestic setting, it can still have that international component, because that's just the reality of the world. And you know it, and I know it from our old jobs that you got bad people that are operating in our country, and that's just how it is. That's just reality, and it's everywhere. It's even on the Texas High Plains they have that, and so yeah, I just wanted to leave that in because I think it's interesting. I think it makes it unique to what's out there, maybe a little bit. That, you know, there's how many modern Westerns have a CIA, you know, like component to it? I don't know. Maybe there's some, but I haven't seen that many. And I just thought it's fun. And I think it's fun for readers to sort of, like, again, I said, you know, I like to, I take things that I think are cool and just smash them together and see what happens. And so wait till book 2. When you see book 2, it's gonna be wild.
Can you talk a little bit about the?
Go ahead.
Sorry to jump in, but can you talk a little bit about the oil company cartel collusion and how that's playing out in small town Texas like this?
Honestly, you know, I've had people ask me about that. I don't know if that's ever happened. That was just sort of a figment of my imagination as a writer. But I thought, wow, how could it not be happening? Because if you know the oil business, I kind of learned it a little bit, you know, doing the work that I did. There's a lot of money, not as much money now as there was a few years ago, but a lot of money flows, and a lot of money is exchanging hands, and a lot of money, it's hard to track. And I thought, man, if you know, if you wanted to, you know, launder money, that'd be a great way to do it. And I thought of some ways to do it, but so that just sort of played well into the story, and it totally fit the Texas High Plains and West Texas, and of course, you know, Odessa, you know, and Midland are big oil hubs and all that are not that far from here, and are still rocking along a little bit, but yeah, so it was just a fun way to sort of mix all that together, and again, without giving any spoilers, how I sort of made that come together. That was kind of based on some, I don't want to say true story, but a lot of this stuff were stories that I heard, and I thought, well, what if it didn't happen exactly like this? What if it happened this way? And what if that person, these people owed each other favors? And yeah, you hear a lot of stories. And so if we're a writer, you're always kind of like, okay, let me sort of piece that together, and how would that play out in a novel or in a series? And so that's what I did.
Well, there's this riff in the book about, you know, especially in this fairly remote part of Texas, about the threat to the old way of life, this way of life that's been going on for generations, and there's a real, you see it in Montana, you see it in, other sort of remote rural places, this, self-reliance, this very, pride of, and then these external forces come in and, they get very entangled in communities, and, very tempting for a brother to sell his soul to the devil,
Yeah.
And I love the way you did that. You showed on a family basis how it can,
Well, the way that played out is entirely realistic, and that's exactly how it goes down. There are families, in the Texas Panhandle. Some have oil, some don't. The ones that did have oil and spent their money wisely, or saved their money wisely, or invested wisely, are very wealthy and have done very well with that. And there's some people that never had the oil, and they're just sort of eking by and just trying to keep the old shack barn, with the roof on it, that kind of a thing. And there's some people that blew all their money, and I mean, you wouldn't even have to make it a thriller. You could write a novel series here that, just based on the lives of people, and it'd be that fascinating and that interesting. But put those two together, right? And they got the thriller and all that aspect. It's really, really fascinating. And so people like the Coles in this situation, I dealt with people like that all the time. They might have had the minerals severed way back when, and they're just kind of sort of eking out a living. We call it land rich and cash poor. So they've got a lot of land, but they don't have a whole lot of cash because cattle make some money, but not that much. And without that oil that to every now and then to sort of kick in and keep the lights on, it's tough. So those guys that are really ranching and doing that just purely based on cattle, it's hard, long, hard, hot work, and they're kind of eking it out like Butch Cole is doing, and that's just the reality of it. But it's a way of life. People love their cattle, they love their horses, and wouldn't trade anything. They might be poor, but they don't care. That's the life they love, and the land means everything to them. And there's something to be said for that.
There's a certain amount of resentment too from family and friends towards Garrett, like, all right, dude, well, you took off, you left.
Yeah.
And I forgive me, I cannot remember his cover story. Where do they think he's going?
Yeah, they think he works overseas and he works in oil and gas, but like offshore. Right. And so it's perfect cover for him because he goes off for months at a time or years, and says, well, I've got another job and I just got to keep going to the next one. And so when he does go to places like Afghanistan and he calls, at weird hours, he'll just say, well, I'm over in the Middle East and I'm, doing on I'm working overseas in oil and gas. And so it's a perfect cover for him, and that's why it kind of works and people believe it.
Yeah. So one of the things you touch on, but folks who aren't native Texans or don't live in Texas might not realize, is that one of the things I don't know if it's unique to Texas, but it's very prevalent in Texas, is that you could own the land, but the mineral rights could have been severed and belonged to somebody else. And so you could have a ranch where there are huge oil deposits and you could watch the oil come out of the ground and you don't get a dime for it.
That's absolutely true. You'll get what they call surface damages. So, you might get paid for that, wherever what they put that in, or if you put a road in, things like that. If you're taking up their land, you'll pay them for that. And, and it's a fair rate and everything. But a lot of times I had some interesting, dealings with that where, some people were glad to have it, even that amount of money was like, okay, well, I'll take what we can get. Cause a few thousand here, a few thousand there helps. And we're glad to have it. And some people were just kind of like, get the hell off my land, don't come back. And, it was a funny deal. Sometimes people would, I'd call up and, say, hey, this is me. And they'd be like, perk up. And then some people, all I'd hear is a slew of profanities or whatever, that here I come, and they didn't want to see me on their land and they didn't want any more oil wells. And I always jokingly say, when I was up there, I had more than a few people tell me, I don't want any more money. And I always laugh. I would say, I don't know how much money you have to not want any more of it, but I want to find out what that's like, And, but that was actually the case, that people had made so much more, money on oil. They couldn't do anything more with it than what they wanted. So it's kind of like it's just a nuisance to have these oil and gas trucks rolling up and down their property and have a rig put on and all that. But that's not the way the deal works. When you have an oil and gas lease and you sign that, dotted line, and here we are, and it goes both ways. The oil company doesn't get to say we paid you enough, and it's a deal. A deal's a deal, and in Texas, you better believe a deal's a deal. So it's one of those things that makes for it made for sometimes a tough job for me because I had people that would say like, if you come on my property, I'll be standing there with a gun, and I'll be like, well, I hope it didn't come to that, but well, here we come.
that whole history of oil in America seems very, very complicated and very, very personal. You read Upton Sinclair, I think the book was just called Oil, but There Will Be Blood, the Daniel Day-Lewis movie, fascinating. And also, have you both read that book about the Osage Killers of the Flower Moon?
Oh, I've heard of it, but I want to read that, but I haven't
yeah yet. Well, it's funny, just briefly, the US government, in an act of infinite wisdom, took the Osage from their ancestral homelands and put them on this, what they thought was this worthless piece of crap, land in Oklahoma. I think it's Oklahoma. Well, it turns out that it was, over one of the richest oil preserves. And so at the beginning of the last century, the Osage were the richest per capita people in the world, and so this very small tribe, they had like Rolls Royces and all this kind of stuff. And it's a fascinating story about sort of just what you're talking about.
No, it is.
The government took it away from them.
Yeah.
Naturally.
Well, and you hit on a point that, I mean, it's a very personal thing because it changes lives, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. And it's ruined a lot of people. It's ruined a lot of people that, even when I would, go up to these ranches, I would talk to people and they'd say, oh, so-and-so's gotten onto drugs. And, it's kind of like they had so much money that they just didn't know what to do, and it ruined lives. But at the same time, I've seen people take that oil money and do tremendous, wonderful things with it, brilliant things, and be, altruistic. And so, it just, you can't say it's all good or all bad. It's everything. And again, for a writer like me, it's perfect because you see how it plays out in the book. It's I won't, again, no spoilers here, but you'll see how it plays out. So, but it makes for a fun dynamic in the writing world.
So my last formal question is you write this beautiful sentence at the end of the book, and I'm going to truncate it a little bit because I don't want to give anything away. But the sentence goes something like, devote himself to blood, soil, and paying back his debts. Blood, soil, and paying back his debts. So why those three things?
Those are important to Texans. They're very important to Texans, and they're important to my protagonist. Blood, that's family. And you may get cross, you may get mad at each other, but that's important. The soil, land means everything. And for him, that was where he was born and raised, his ranch, and that means more than him to anything. And paying back debts, that's another. He's not a Lannister, but in Texas, you pay back your debts, or you better, or somebody might come looking for you, and so it's that those are just marks of a good, solid man that Garrett is and wants to be known for. That he's not gonna shirk a debt. He's gonna go back and pay it, whatever it takes. He owes these people, and he's gonna make good on it. That's just the bottom line.
There were some wonderful surprises too in the book. I thought, again, I always risk giving away spoilers, but introducing this kid, from Afghanistan into Texas, into this environment, some real magic happens. There's some really magical scenes. Butch doesn't react the way you think he's going to react. It brings out a certain part of his character that's maybe been dormant for a while, and those are some really great scenes.
So well done.
Don't you think,
well
Don?
done.
Yeah,
thank you.
Incredible. So I've got a question from Twitter for you, and this is from Kerry Frey, who is also a Texan, and he said, "Did you feel a responsibility for painting both accurate and a favorable description of life in West Texas.
Yeah, I mean, well, I didn't feel like any kind of obligation, because I love West Texas and I love living here and I love the people and I'm proud of it. So for me, that wasn't a hard part. But yeah, do you want to make it accurate? Yeah, I mean, I wanted to kind of put in, so with Garrett, he has Native American ancestry, and so there's some times when he looks back and goes, man, I kind of, there's some parts, and again, I don't want to give them away, where there's a history there of something where you think, man, that those people lived a certain way and then had to move on the reservations, and he regrets that. So I think I do it in a way that most Texans actually feel, that it's not some sort of browbeating you into feeling guilty, but you kind of recognize, man, here's how things were, and things are what they are, but he loves his state and he loves his heritage, and he loves both sides of his heritage, from the cowboy heritage to the Native American side, the Comanches and all that. And I think that's how Texans are. We sort of embrace what we have, and it's not to say that everything was ever done right, or everything was perfect, but your history, it is who you are, and you learn from it, you grow from it, and you hope to try to do something better. And I think that's what Garrett's perspective was, and that's definitely kind of what I wanted to put in the book. And I think most people have come away with a real positive, came away thinking this is sort of an accurate depiction, but it's a positive depiction.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
There are a few Facebook questions too. Todd has a question, and we just touched on it a little bit, but he says, horses play a bit of a role in the story, both on the ranch from the emotional standpoint and as a tactical option. Was that included for a particular reason, or just something that came out of the setting?
Both. So on the tactical side, I'll start with that first. I just thought that was cool. And that's Garrett's background from special forces and all that. And I just thought it was cool. It was just one of those things that I wanted to see play out. I thought, horses, AR-15s, helicopters, how could you go wrong, right? I mean, it just sounded, it sounded fun. It sounded like a fun battle scene for me on the Llano Estacado, on the high plains of Texas. I thought that would be wild. So that was good. On the more like emotional side, particularly when it comes to society, I remember growing up, riding at a young age, and I remember being sort of scared doing it, because you're a little bit afraid anyway, just because here's this big beast you're getting on, and it's intimidating, but you don't want to disappoint people. And I remember riding, going to work cattle with cowboys, or learning with there's a particularly good cowboy that taught me how to ride, and I never wanted to disappoint anyone. I always wanted to do all the right stuff, and I didn't want to embarrass myself, and but I wanted people to be proud of me, and so I put a lot of what I felt as a kid into society, and those same emotions, and wanted to work hard, and wanted to show that I'm worth my salt and all that when I'm out working cattle or whatever it was. I put that in. So there was a bit of an emotional side to that part of the horse part of the book.
And of course, the Comanches were the great horsemen of the plains. I mean, there's that, you both know that wonderful scene in Blood Meridian, where the approach of the Comanches comes on horseback. Just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I kind of geek out over that stuff. I always want to put like the Mongols against the Comanches and see what what happened. Take these great horse cultures of the world and say, like, who would win. I mean, it would be fun. I love that kind of stuff. I just think it's really, really neat. And again, that's why I wanted to put some of that in the book. And I loved Empire of the Summer Moon. If you guys haven't read that nonfiction book about the Comanches, and it's just absolutely fascinating. And I think we have a rich history and a rich culture here, and I wanted to bring that, show that to the world. And a lot of people don't know that much about West Texas or the High Plains, and so I wanted to showcase it, and hope I'm proud of it. So I hope people will be interested and want to come see it and want to come visit it.
And that's another tie into Afghanistan and modernness too, right? Because you got the horse soldiers from 5th Special Forces Group, which is amazing, right? To think that, in the 21st century.
It's amazing. Right? I mean, again, that's the kind of stuff I geek out on. I just love it, man. I love the fact that we're fighting this war with some of the most sophisticated technology that the world has ever seen, but yet you got these guys on horseback riding in the battle.
Yep.
It's just that's as cool as it gets in my book.
Wow, I wasn't aware of that. Really?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
rode with the Northern Alliance. So the horse soldiers from 5th Special Forces Group were literally calling down JDAM strikes from horseback with the Northern Alliance. It's incredible.
Yeah, there's a great book. I think it's called Horse Soldiers. I read it years ago. And so if you haven't read it, it's a great nonfiction book, and I
Is that
recommend
by
that.
Stanton, maybe?
I think that's right.
Yeah,
I think
we
that
have
rings a bell. Yeah,
to
that
check
rings a
that
bell.
out. Yeah, I love the mercurial female CIA. I can't remember her name, but can you tell us a little
Kim.
bit about her?
Yeah, Kim's cool. Kim is a sort of composite of some women that I knew at the CIA, and that I either worked for, worked with, or was friends with, and she's fun. She's fun. She's no nonsense, but she's just a cool character, and I utilize her. And I don't think this gives away a spoiler, but she's get used to her. She's going to be around. She's fun. She's cool, and yeah, and things are going to get interesting. And I actually in book 2 I get into her point of view, and so I get more into that character, and so yeah, so I think she's a fun character, but she's based on real people, and real people that I knew and respected, and I wanted to show a real positive light of some of these female case officers that are, man, they're just top notch, and wow, super impressive.
Have you sold the film or TV rights yet?
There's a lot of interest. I'll say that there's a lot of interest right now, so we're working through all that. But yeah,
awesome.
there's yeah, no, it's all good news.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Don, what do you have going on? What's going on with Matt? Have you finished up the next one, or is that what you're working on now?
I did. No, so I actually turned in Hostile Intent, which is the 3rd book in the Matt Drake series, to Tom Colgan on Monday. So
Wow.
it is that'll be out in, I think, May of next year.
Awesome. And then how about Clancy? Are you signed up to do another one?
It's looking pretty good. I can't do the formal announcement, I think, just yet, but it's looking like I'll get to do a couple more of those. So yeah.
Right on. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. Any more questions coming in? Well, just some comments from fans who like your books too, Don, that are chiming in saying how much they like your work. No other.
If you like my books, you need to buy Taylor's book. Like, his book is my favorite book this year. It's incredible. I've been talking about it since I got to read it. You guys will love this freaking book.
It's going to appeal to a wide readership too, don't you think? I mean,
absolutely.
People that like the military heavy stuff will dig it.
Yep.
Then also the CJ Box, Craig Johnson, J. Todd
Yep.
Scott, fans will like it too. So
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Can you give us a hint of where you're going next, Taylor?
Let's just say, I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to give anything away because I think it'll be fun. If people get into this, I don't want to spoil it, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be very relevant. I'll say that. And what I've been telling people, I'll say, if you like Downrange, you're going to love the next book, because it's a lot of the same, what people are liked about it, the relationships, the fun characters. And at this point, I've had an opportunity to kind of gauge people on who they want to see more of. And so, I listen to what readers say, and I write to that, because if they're the ones that are going to be reading it, and if they're enjoying it, then I'd say, okay, well, let's go with this character and let's see what they're up to, and let's get into their lives. And so I think it'll get more. There'll still be all the action and adventure that you find in Downrange, but it's just going to get deeper into their lives, deeper in their relationships, deeper into dilemmas, deeper into problems. And so it's just going to keep playing out over the series. So like I say, if you like this one, you're going to love book 2. So get this one so you can get on to the next one. I think it's going to be a fun one, and I'm excited about it. I'm excited to get book 1 out. I'll be excited to get book 2 out, because I think it's going to be one step in front of the one step in front of the next. But
will a certain part of it stay rooted in this part of Texas?
Absolutely, yeah. The series will be based in this part of Texas, but I'm always going to keep a little international angle to it. So you might see them venture off a little bit here and there. I'll kind of leave it at that. But yeah, it's going to be fun.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, folks, if you're watching, we're probably almost sold out of downrange, so we may have to set up another shipment to you,
Awesome.
Taylor, if you're
Do
okay
it.
with
Do it.
that.
Yeah, anytime.
But thanks so much for spending this hour, both of you. It's been a lot of fun.
Hey, seriously, well, thank you for the kind words about the book. That just makes me really, I mean, I don't even know where to begin, but to say thank you to you and to Don, and you know, again, Don knows you put your blood, sweat, and tears into these projects, and you want people to like them. You want people to be excited about them, and when you hear things like that, it just makes it makes your whole world. So thank you.
You're welcome. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right, gentlemen. You have a great rest of your evening. And
Thank you.
We'll be catching up with you soon.
Thank
Thanks,
you. Thanks for
Patrick.
having me on.
Congrats, Taylor.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Don.
Yep.
Good evening, everybody.